Yeah, I think domiciling in Africa is a bold statement that an investment vehicle makes, because most of the time you find the capital that you're trying to raise is not African capital, but you are investing in African businesses. So then you kind of have a crossroad of, I'm building businesses in Africa, but I'm not actually domiciled in Africa. So the idea is to be able to preach water and drink water, not preach water and drink wine. Nothing wrong with drinking wine at all, but the point is you really want to lead by example, right? And so I think domiciling in Africa is that first step that you have to take if you want to invest in African SMEs. So you have to lead by example by actually setting up your vehicle there. And what it does though, is it gives, a lot of, comfort to other investors to crowd in, but also to your SMEs as well. When they are calling capital and you're disbursing from an African vehicle, I think it sends a very strong, message. In addition to that, I think it's really good for the human capital in Africa too, because if we don't domicile in Africa, where are we going to get the skill set? So fund administration, legal, professionals, trusts, these are people who derive their income from fund domiciliation. So if we don't build an industry that supports this, then we will never have the human capital. So all these things I think are very important to ensure that we are domiciled in the continent. I think a really big signal was the recent changes in the Grey List. So there's a list somewhere that exists. It's a blacklist and a Grey List rather. And it's FATF, which is an international body that looks at anti-money laundering, that looks at counter-financing of terrorism activities and all that. So they kind of rate different countries based on their risk profile, and then they put you on a list. So of course, a couple of African countries were in the Grey List, but they've done a lot of work as a government to ensure that these countries have come out of the Grey List. So part of these countries was Mauritius, which originally was not on the Grey List, but then went back into the Grey List because of issues of money laundering. But they worked so hard to ensure that they tightened the whole processes and ensure that they reduce the risks of money laundering. So whilst it could take you maybe 2 weeks to open an account in Mauritius, now it takes you probably 2 months, because they're so rigorous, the KYC checks are so important, and they make sure that through every step of the way, they are de-risking this opportunity for an investor. So I think certain signals like countries coming out of the Grey List sends a very strong signal to investors. So, congratulations to Nigeria and South Africa. They recently, got out of the Grey List. And I think more and more African countries need to really work hard on their policy, on their money laundering, kind of provisions in their laws even, to ensure that, they create conducive environments for investors. You have to be intentional when it comes to making this investment decision. So partly it's women are generally good credits. So data has shown that if a bank lends to women, there's a 90% plus chance of her paying back that money. So already we are having data that proves that women are bankable, reliable, that they mitigate risk, they calculate risk before they make a big step. If I'm gonna take a loan, I really need to think about what am I going to really use this money for? Is it going to grow my business, etc. So women are known to be good credit generally. And so we need to take it a step further. You're not just good credit, but I should invest in you, right? I should support you to actually build a fund, and I should support you to then invest in women-led SMEs and to create jobs for women and youth especially. And that's what we are all about on the Africa Growth Fund. We really aim at ensuring that we pass that benefit all the way to the ultimate beneficiary, who is the young woman, the young man, and so that's really the idea. If you invest in women, they will invest also in other women. Yeah, so I think first, if you domicile in Africa, you're bringing foreign currency. Normally, people subscribe into funds with foreign currency, not local currency. That tends to be the truth, across the board. And so because you're raising capital in US dollar or in euro, you tend to really be able to build even a market just within the FX part of the way you raise funds. So I think starting there, you're able to build a new instrument. You're able to bring in FX into the country, inflows, foreign direct investments. You're able to also, kind of provide alternative investment opportunities, right? So the idea of unlocking capital is, for example, instruments that are traditionally available then become complementary, because if I'm a pension fund, for example, all I do is typically invest in the capital markets because it's safe, it's listed, there's some liquidity if it's fixed income. But if I'm investing in alternative assets have proven to perform really well, especially when there's economic downturn. So the idea is to crowd in more capital from these traditional forms of or pockets of capital alongside other like-minded investors. And you build a new asset class. Now you start to talk about alternatives. You have complementarity in terms of risk, and you're also able to have innovation, right? So like venture capital would never exist if we never had funds, if we never domiciled funds, right? So, and all these startups that people are coming up with that grow and scale and become unicorns would never exist if then we didn't have venture capital funds. So I think it's kind of all circular in the sense that if you don't take that risk and put capital aside and invest in these vehicles, then we'll not really have innovation in our economies. So I think it's really circular in my mind. Like I kind of connect all the dots, and it makes a lot of sense as to why we need to support these emerging managers. So we are a limited partner, and typically as a limited partner, you provide capital. You kind of provide a framework, you provide capital, you provide governance support to the general partner who's the recipient of the funds. And so what we've done really well is we kind of work with the emerging managers to invest in vehicles that make sense for them. So we're not going to force you necessarily to set up a fund if, for example, in that country, the laws do not provide for general partner, limited partner type of structures. So we kind of work within what makes sense and what is practical to be able to set up funds that make sense for our emerging managers. So ideally, we kind of be creative and innovative in how we structure our funds. And it's not a cookie cutter solution. Each jurisdiction is different. And so for some jurisdictions, we've taken the view that we will be the sole investor in that vehicle. And it works because no one else would do that if we didn't take the first step. So we have good examples of investments where we are going single LP into these countries, like Ethiopia, Rwanda, where we are going to be sole LPs. And the idea is hopefully it will be able to catalyze others to come along. We also have really good examples of now local capital, where local high net worth individuals have also supported fund managers. So they come together in a vehicle and then they're able to subscribe into the fund. So we have really good case studies and examples of real life situations, real life cases that have shown, a lot of traction in that regard.